Reverse dieting, it is one of the most overhyped but also misunderstood topics in nutrition. Some people treat it like a magic metabolism fix while others dismiss it entirely. Where's the truth? Probably somewhere in the middle, which is why in today's video, I'm breaking down the truth about what reverse dieting actually does and how you can use it properly for yourself after a dieting phase or with your nutrition clients. First off, reverse dieting is just a structured way of adding more food back in or calories back in after a fat loss phase. And what this means for most dieters is adding in anywhere between 50 to 200 calories per week, with the bumps coming mainly from carbohydrates and fats and not usually protein. If you think about a conventional dieting phase, most dieting phases are going to have more protein to begin with, so we don't need to add more of that back in most cases. And the goal of this phase is to gradually move towards maintenance calories so you can keep your results while improving your metabolism over time, because there's going to be some impacts to that from the dieting phase, while also not rebounding too hard and losing all the progress that you've made, as well as losing the entire structure of your diet and of your nutrition that helped you be successful. In some cases, you're gonna hear reverse dieting referred to as a maintenance phase. It's the same idea basically. We're talking about that transition from active fat loss to maintenance and how you get there. The point is to stabilize and recover from the diet, both physically and the impacts on your metabolism, but also mentally as well. Now, here's what reverse dieting is not. It's not a magic trick for your metabolism. Remember, after you've dieted successfully, your metabolism is going to come down a bit. There's going to be an adaptation to that because you're moving around a smaller body. And adding more food in after a period of time can increase your metabolism, but it's not going to be magic. Adding more food in a structured way and incrementally can increase the amount of calories you're burning, but it's going to help you burn more calories through burning more energy through the movement that you're already doing. Think about the active dieting process. If you're super hungry and low energy, you're not going to be burning a lot of energy, but we add more food in and you're more likely to improve your energy levels and burn more calories through that, as well as burn more calories through spontaneous movement because you have more energy to burn, as well as increase your training output. So the amount of calories you're burning through exercise before is probably going to increase because you have more energy to perform. So it's not a magic trick here for your metabolism. You have more energy in a structured way, and therefore you burn more energy, and it's a net positive. And I will tell you, although there are physical benefits to doing a reverse diet, the biggest benefit is definitely on the mental side of things. A properly planned reverse diet is going to give someone a plan of what to do after their fat loss phase, which is going to be a complete contrast from an absolute free-for-all after a diet. If you haven't had a plan for what happens after your diet, you've probably been in this situation. You work really hard for weeks and months to get leaner, watching absolutely everything you're eating until you reach your goal or until you go on that trip. And after that point, when your inhibitions are lower and you're feeling quite deprived and hungry, you go completely off the rails. The things you were just aiming to achieve from a weight perspective or from an aesthetic perspective almost disappears overnight, which isn't entirely the case, but that's how you feel and that's how you might perceive the situation, and it's completely depressing. I say this because I've been there. I remember some of my first physique shows, which we'll talk about in a second, getting in fantastic shape, better shape than I had ever been in before, to only not have a plan after the diet and eat whatever I wanted. I remember in the back room, the pump-up room after one physique show, them having a bunch of pizza back there, which actually felt a little bit cruel and just going completely off the rails. You don't want to be in this situation, and having more structure and a plan through a reverse diet is going to help you manage that. Which brings me to my next point: who actually needs a reverse diet? Is it more important for a specific type of dieters than others? There are two main scenarios where a reverse diet makes the most sense. And the first one I had just mentioned, and that's the competitive physique athlete after a competition or after a photo shoot. These people have typically dieted to a level of leanness that they can't or shouldn't maintain. They're extremely lean and they need to regain some fat to go back to a sustainable level of living and function. So a reverse diet and adding structured calories back in is going to allow them to regain function, their energy levels, improve their hormones and libido, as well as performance in training. And this phase is important because for the most part, trying to stay that lean after this time point, trying to stay really shredded after a show is a bad idea for most people. And despite what you've heard, reverse dieting isn't going to help you maintain 5% body fat, but that's the point. Because you got to get back to the point, to a level of leanness and body fat percentage that you can maintain and put yourself in a position to improve and gain more muscle, but also regain function. And most competitive physique athletes know this. They know to improve, they're going to need to gain some muscle, and you're not going to be able to do that, at least not effectively, in a calorie deficit or too close to maintenance. That being said, especially for natural competitors, you don't need really restrictive dieting cycles and massing phases. The truth is somewhere in between, an emphasis of both cycles, but you don't have to have these huge swings between being super lean and then also overweight and coming back down. But regardless, having a structured phase after a dieting phase and being super lean and getting off stage is going to be helpful to regain function, but also to mentally put you in a good headspace because that time after a show can be difficult enough. Now, there's also another group where reverse dieting can be helpful for, which is going to be lifestyle clients coming out of a diet. For many people just looking to improve their overall health, maybe they've lost some weight during a successful diet, they want to maintain those results without rebounding, without gaining all the way back. The process of reverse dieting is going to help them bridge that gap between a calorie deficit to closer to maintenance and at a level that they can maintain. After you've lost some weight, you essentially need to figure out how you're going to eat to maintain those results. And for the most part, it doesn't need to be completely different food choices, which we'll talk about in a second. It can be the same foods in larger amounts, but you need a structure and you need a plan to work towards maintenance. And the best way to do this is going to be systematically adding food back in on a week-to-week basis, but also making those changes depending on what you're seeing with the scale and how you feel, which we'll touch on in a second. Having a plan through reverse diet is going to provide some structure and reduce anxiety around this new phase and adding more food in, which can be difficult for a lot of people. You've just spent weeks and months dieting and now essentially you're doing the opposite. Having some structure in place around what that looks like is going to be one of the smartest things you can do. And it can make maintenance feel a lot more manageable. Now, if you had to ask me what the real benefits of a reverse diet is, here's what I would say. The biggest thing you can take away from a reverse dieting phase is helping you find out what your new maintenance is. Remember, in most cases, you're leaner than you were before and you're in a different body. And that's going to mean that you have a different energy expenditure and some new habits and lifestyle changes that you picked up along the way. So what worked before to maintain your weight is going to look different than it does now. And a reverse diet is going to allow you to find that number because chances are your maintenance calories have changed. And although it's not a free-for-all, there's a lot of benefits that come along with eating slightly more food and working towards maintenance, like your performance in the gym increasing, which if you've been dieting for a period of time, probably has regressed a little bit. So that can be fun. You have more energy, you can push a little bit harder, but it also gives you the chance to reduce dieting fatigue coming out of the diet. If you're low energy and you're hungry and maybe you're a bit irritable out of a diet, it's going to be tough to nail this transition. So having more structure and clarity around what to do and what that will look like is one of the smartest things you can do. Now, here's what you need to look out for when it comes to reverse dieting. These are a lot of common mistakes people will make when trying to nail this phase or just the post-diet phase in general. I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make during reverse dieting phase is they trust what should work way too much. For example, what an online calculator says their maintenance calories should be and how it compares to where they were dieting, and they go right to that and they're somewhat disappointed based on the results. You can't trust that stuff. What you should do is take your lowest level of food on the diet and start to incrementally add food in and adjust based on the results that you're seeing. For a physique athlete, your body weight is going to need to come up after the diet, and that's okay. But for a lifestyle client, you want to be adding in 2.5 to 5% of the calories that you were eating to work towards maintenance while trying to keep your body weight relatively the same. And then you're going to add food in incrementally based on how you're feeling, how you're looking, and what the scale is saying. If you're adding in body weight too quick, meaning you're gaining more than, 0.5 pound to a pound on a weekly average, we'll talk about water weight in a second, you're gonna pull back a little bit or stay at the same level of food for another week or another couple of weeks. Make these changes based on what you're seeing, not just what should theoretically happen. And this is where having an objective set of eyes, like a nutrition coach, guide you through this process can be very valuable because they'll be able to take the emotion out of it and make the best decisions moving forward for your reverse diet. With that being said, you also don't want to navigate this process too slow and actually stay in a calorie deficit for too long. If you're adding more food in, but you're still losing weight, you're not really in a reverse diet, you're still in a calorie deficit. So you want to keep tabs on what you're seeing, but also add more food in. If you're done dieting and you're happy with your leanness and the results, get out of the deficit and add more food in. Also, when it comes to scale weight, keep in mind as we're adding in more carbohydrates and fat, that's also going to be accompanied with some water weight, because as we fill in our glycogen stores, especially if we've been dieting for a longer period of time, those can be somewhat depleted, even if we've done refeeds. Your water weight's gonna come up a little bit. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and it could be an overall good thing because you'll have more energy and your muscles are filling up. It doesn't mean that you're just gaining back body fat. Some of it will be, but for the most part, we just want to be wary of what happens with the scale weight when we add more food in. You also don't want to overdo junk food or non-diet food right away. In my perspective, keeping in some of that junk food during the dieting phase can help you with cravings, especially if you're not overdoing it. But in this transition phase, in the reverse diet, if you just focus on that and adding more food in and adding more calories in coming just from that, it can be tougher to navigate because you don't have that big picture goal staring you right in the face. What I would do in most cases is that the additional calories that are coming in, I would just increase the serving sizes of the meals that I'm already eating and make, more of the food choices that I know are going to keep me full and are going to keep me energized. And I would just eat those in larger amounts to help navigate this phase towards maintenance. You're going to set yourself up for success much more effectively this way. Now, if you want to see some more practical examples of me walking through an actual nutrition client with a reverse diet, let me know in the comments below and I'll put together another video documenting that. And with that being said, that's reverse dieting and the science that goes behind it. You're probably picking up on that reverse dieting is just as much an art with some of the mental benefits than it is a true science and the fix to your metabolism, but that's okay because it has its place. It can be an underused tool in your dieting strategy, and it really comes down to having structure and a plan after the dieting phase. Now, if you've ever done a reverse diet or even you're thinking about it, I would love to know your experience and what you're considering down in the comments below. And if you're a coach that wants to master strategies like this during the entire fat loss phase with clients, you should definitely check out our nutrition certification, the Nutrition Coaching Academy. You can find out more details about that down in the description below. And with that being said, if you enjoyed today's video, you're gonna love this video I have linked up right here. Today we talked all about reverse dieting. In this video, I'm gonna go over the 1200 calorie diet, what that means and who it's for. You're gonna learn more details about that in this video right here. So check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video.